Next on Currents News, the storm slamming the East Coast, now deadly. New York City seeing the worst wind since Superstorm Sandy. That while controversy swirls around the Big Apple's top doctor, she's calling it quits after a fight with the mayor. Plus, the latest on crime, stats show New York is riddled with bullets. And Pope Benedict's health, the world is watching closely. There's a promising update.
A mom who turned her hardest days with a chronic illness into a book for her son. I'm Jessica Easthope with how the story is helping other families just like them.
A busy night of news starts right now. Tropical storm Isaias is now a killer, blowing through the Big Apple with gusts not felt since Superstorm Sandy. Good evening, I'm Emily Druby. Those winds took a life this morning, sending a tree falling in Queens, crushing a car and the person inside. New York City residents are being urged to stay indoors tonight, and subway service has been suspended at outdoor stations. The tropical storm is racing up the East Coast and spurring tornadoes and power outages along the way. Camila Bernal has the latest.
On the East Coast, Isaias had more than 100 million people under a tropical storm warning.
We hope for the best and prepare for the worst.
The storm is expected to bring strong wind gusts of more than 60 miles per hour for major Northeast metro areas. Forecasted winds in New York City could be the strongest the city has seen since Superstorm Sandy in 2012.
Everyone take this very seriously. Between the rain, flooding potential, the winds, even again potential tornado, that's a lot.
Tornadoes are a huge concern. At least 20 were reported between North Carolina and New Jersey Tuesday morning.
It's nothing there. You can look across the field, you can actually see the frame of a mobile home across the field. Vehicles are turned over, vehicles are piled up on top of each other. It's just very sad.
On Maryland's eastern shore, a suspected tornado caused widespread damage. Another touching down near Ocean City, New Jersey. And tornado warnings also issued for the Philadelphia and New York metro area.
That is such a rarity here in New York City. It may sound to some people like that's not something to worry about. It is something to worry about.
Camila Bernal, Currents News.
A storm of violence is prompting worries the battle days are coming back to the Big Apple. The cops are reporting that murders and shootings in town are up a lot. This July saw a surge in killings of almost 60% over a year ago. Shootings are soaring too, up 177% in July from the same month in 2019. That's 244 shootings compared with the 88 recorded last year. Other crimes are increasing too, with burglaries and auto thefts rising between 31 and 53%. Tensions between New York City's health commissioner and the mayor peaked this morning as well, the top doctor handing in her resignation papers. Dr. Auxiris Barbo's move comes after months of strains between the health department and Mayor Bill de Blasio during the coronavirus outbreak. Barbo resigned in protest over his honor's handling of the crisis, specifically the mayor's decision to put New York City's health and hospitals in charge of contact tracing, even though that's considered the health department's area of expertise. In her letter, she wrote that the department's expertise was not used to the degree it could have been. On the flip side, the state is reporting record lows for coronavirus hospitalizations. There are 536 patients, the smallest total since the worst days of the pandemic back in March. Of that group, 136 are in intensive care, with 3 deaths reported statewide. Governor Andrew Cuomo is crediting New Yorkers for keeping the disease at bay. But the impact of the COVID pandemic is going to be felt around the world for many years to come, even if a vaccine is found. That alarm is being sounded by the top man at the World Health Organization. John Lawrence has the story.
The World Health Organization says COVID-19's grip on the world isn't easing.
It will be felt for decades to come.
Officials say in addition to health, there are also social, economic, and political concerns about the impact of the virus. Speaking of politics, President Trump says he doesn't trust the U.S. Postal Service with mail-in ballots this November.
Great workers and everything, but they have old equipment, very old equipment. And I don't think the post office is prepared for a thing like this.
The pandemic has some voters leery of being in crowded areas on Election Day, and the post office disputes the president's claim, saying it has ways to help educate the public on what to expect. Speaking of education, some students are back in the classroom despite the coronavirus.
We want to send kids back to school, but we're in the middle of a pandemic that's getting worse, and we're not doing anything to stop it. So this is just going to add fuel to the fire.
Health officials say mask wearing, hand washing, and maintaining distance will help battle the virus.
Forget what your leaders are telling you. Forget what anybody else is telling you. Just the people rise up, do this, rise to this occasion, do this for 3 weeks, and we'll be looking at the backside of this curve. How hard is that?
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
Students for Life are fighting to overturn the arrest of 2 of their members for leaving a message at a Washington, D.C. abortion clinic.
I majored in political science. This is public property.
Before the handcuffs were slapped on, the pro-life activists were writing in chalk, "Preborn Black Lives Matter" on the sidewalk outside a Planned Parenthood clinic. Their goal on Saturday to draw attention to the abortion rate in the African American community. The young people were released after getting citations for not having permits. The Black Lives Matter murals painted on the streets of New York's 5 boroughs were done without a permit. Mayor Bill de Blasio now admitting he skipped the approval process because, in his words, "We're at a moment of history that transcends all normal realities." Other groups, including Blue Lives Matter and Women for America First, are complaining they're being blocked from creating their own murals without getting permits first. The Vatican is demanding tonight that the firebombing of the cathedral in Nicaragua be investigated as arson. The faithful are heartbroken over the attack.
¿Por qué lo hicieron así, Señor?
Nicaragua's vice president is blaming church candles for the blaze. The Holy See is not buying that as the cause of the fire inside the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception in Managua. The witnesses reported seeing a Molotov cocktail being thrown into the church. A nearly 400-year-old crucifix of Christ was heavily damaged. Pope Francis has condemned the attack. The latest now on the health of Benedict XVI. A German newspaper sparked a scare over his well-being when they published a story that the retired pontiff was seriously ill. Now the Vatican and Benedict's personal secretary are pushing back against that claim. The Vatican responding to the declarations made by the Pope Emeritus biographer Peter Seewald, who claimed Benedict XVI was seriously ill and extremely fragile. The Holy See's spokesperson Matteo Bruni and Benedict XVI's personal secretary Monsignor Gregor Gainswine both saying the health conditions of the Pope Emeritus are not that worrying. Pope Benedict XVI has been suffering for weeks from an infection, which especially affects the skin on his face. It has been causing him pain, itchiness, and fever. He has been receiving antibiotics. The Vatican says his health reflects that of a 93-year-old who is going through the most difficult part of a painful but not critical illness. Seewald visited the Pope Emeritus to present him with a biography he'd written about him. After their meeting, Seewald told a German paper that Benedict XVI was ill, that he was barely audible, and he was extremely fragile, although he was in good spirits. According to Seewald, Benedict has completed his will and expressed the wish that he be buried inside St. Peter's Basilica. Hundreds of people are being treated tonight for injuries after a massive explosion in Beirut, and more than 30 people have been killed. That number is unfortunately expected to rise. Hospitals are said to be overwhelmed by casualties, and Lebanon's Red Cross is making an urgent call for blood. What's not yet clear is what caused the explosion in the port area of the city. Officials speculated that it was a major fire at a warehouse that housed explosives. The blast was heard as far as Cyprus, 150 miles away. It comes at a sensitive time with the country's economic collapse reigniting tensions. The NYPD is monitoring the situation. There's a lot more news headed your way. Opening schools could be the hardest battle in the war on COVID, but the Diocese of Brooklyn has a plan to get students back in the building. That's next. And what if students never return? More parents than ever are thinking about homeschooling for good. Plus, there's this third option. It's called learning pods.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
What's going to happen in September? That's the big question for New York parents anxious to get their children back to school. With just weeks before the bell rings, the city is still waiting for an official word on protocol. Meanwhile, the Diocese of Brooklyn's Catholic schools are hard at work trying to get those answers.
Good morning.
Catholic schools in the Diocese of Brooklyn are hoping in the fall school will look like this and not like this.
I think our ultimate goal really is to have a 100% reopening.
Superintendent of Schools Thomas Chadzuko wants to see students in September. He is teaming up with Joseph Esposito, the diocesan official responsible for opening churches and schools safely.
We're pretty confident that we can open up on time with the most normal situation as possible.
Right now, the plan to have students in class this fall needs the okay from Governor Andrew Cuomo, and he said a decision about the state schools will be made the first week of August. Esposito wants moms and dads to know there will be a lot of safety measures in place: hand sanitizing stations, enhanced cleanings, and health checks at all school entrances.
We're pretty confident that we can open up on time with the most normal situation as possible.
The goal is for a normal Monday through Friday school week.
Most of the schools have the room to social distance, to clean the schools. If there's more room needed, a lot of the schools have auditoriums and gyms and other areas they can use.
Only if that proves impossible, a blend of online learning at home and classroom time is being looked at too.
I think we really need to give parents hope. I think we need to give our teachers hope and say, let's plan for full reopening, and if we have to kick it down a notch to hybrid, I think that's acceptable.
The diocese is studying school reopenings in other countries. They're promising to follow whatever guidelines the state lays out, but they're also asking for help.
I really would like to plead for the city and the state to not forget us when they're giving out services and programs to their schools.
The Diocese of Brooklyn will be paying close attention to the school decisions made for New York's public schools. Governor Cuomo is expected to have an announcement about those reopening plans by the end of the week. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is warning the pandemic is causing the biggest disruption of education in history. The devout Catholic is saying more than 1 billion students are suffering because of school closures in more than 160 countries.
Now, we face a generational catastrophe that would waste untold human potential, undermine decades of progress, and exacerbate entrenched inequalities.
The world leader adds that successful distance learning for kids depends on living conditions and the distribution of resources. A large number of parents in the United States are considering homeschooling for their kids in the fall. A new survey finds that over 80% of moms and dads are worried about sending their children back to school during the pandemic, and they are thinking about teaching the kids at home, with half of them strongly considering the move. There's a new third option for parents who fall somewhere in between wanting to send their children back to school and wanting to keep them home. It's called pandemic pods. Laura Jarrett tells us some parents who can afford it are hiring tutors or retired teachers for small private classes across the country.
First thing I think you need to do is get out your homework.
With coronavirus resurging across the country and so much uncertainty about what school looks like this fall, many parents are now taking matters into their own hands.
Right now, people are in panic mode. You're going to check each other.
Marnie Weinstein, an education consultant in Washington, D.C., says parents are reaching out desperate for other options.
How many parents would you say have reached out to you?
My emails are overflowing. My text messages are overflowing.
She's helping parents form what they're calling learning pods, small groups of young children paired with a single teacher in a home.
It could be a basement, it could be a room upstairs, just as long as the teacher can set it up to feel like a classroom.
This pod in a suburb of Atlanta has 12 families and 28 kids, from kindergarten through 5th grade.
We've talked about consistency and routine. Whoever is hosting the group of kids, my kids are going to get their backpack, laptop, in their backpack, their water bottle and a snack, and they're going to take it to whatever house they're going to. We're hopefully going to stay pretty consistent with that.
I've envisioned a one-room schoolhouse. We wanted to create an environment where our kids could work together and be together and have that social part of school that's so important for their development.
And their kids like this option too.
I'd rather be in a pod with my friends than be at home just working on school by myself.
From San Francisco to Toledo, Ohio to Tampa, Florida, pandemic pods or micro school groups are popping up all over social media, each with their own set of rules.
We are going to say that we can go to the grocery store, but always wear masks and wash our hands.
But in-person instruction doesn't come cheap, with some parents guaranteeing a teacher their full salary or more, even if their child ends up back in a classroom at some point this year.
So a lot of the teachers, they'll tell me they're not sure they want to sign on, and a lot of them are coming back because they can get the same amount of money or more, working half day, staying safe.
A lucrative deal for teachers, but yet another way COVID has highlighted how a good education often depends on what your parents can afford. A more cost-effective option, families who plan to follow their school's virtual learning plan.
We're not homeschooling them. There's a difference.
They're forming their own pods and hiring a tutor to help with all the digital homework and check-ins.
Once they're done with the digital learning, then they take a break, and that's where the tutor will come and facilitate and make sure that they stay on track with that curriculum.
In many cases, the details are still being ironed out, but parents who have kids with a pre-existing condition or special needs say the pod model is the safest for their families as the pandemic continues.
I think it's a fantastic option because you can kind of tailor your educational needs to whatever your family needs.
When the kids look back, they're gonna remember a fun community time that they had during these few months, because it's not gonna be forever.
That was Laura Jarrett reporting. Still to come on Currents News, this Catholic woman wrote a book that she hopes will change the world, starting with children. And it's a family affair inspired by a hurricane. As it rained down, this artist rose up. In a new book, Julie Stam is writing for her son. It's because he's giving her the strength to cope with a tough illness. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has the story.
My mom is super, but some days she may not feel so super.
Julie Stam is reading her new book, Some Days We, with her 4-year-old son, Jack.
You want to hold it?
Just like the dedication page says, everything in her life is for him.
That's true.
Jack is Julie's motivation and her muse. After Jack was born, Julie's multiple sclerosis wasn't just about her anymore. She wanted Jack to understand that some days would be harder than others.
She was old enough to get what MS means, so I wanted to have a way for him to actually visualize it in a book.
The book follows a boy named Wyatt and his mom, Anne, who, like Julie, has MS. Every page is a true story of a day when Julie's MS was debilitating. But the book is about how Jack saw her hardest days. To him, they were some of the best.
They are my worst days in my mind, but then I sat down and talked to him and I said, how do you feel about this? And they were like his favorite days.
Since her diagnosis in 2007, Julie has had her ups and downs.
If I don't see my feet, I can't move them. So I have to, like when I walk down a stair with a mask, I have to be able to see my feet.
You wouldn't know it from looking at her, which is why Some Days We highlights that you can't always see a disability. The book is now being used to help families just like Julie's.
Getting parents that didn't tell their children they had MS and using it as a tool to tell them, which is probably my favorite thing that I've gotten so far.
One source of positivity throughout Julie's battle with MS has been her faith, especially her friendship with Father Joseph Fonte, her family priest.
He guides us. He's just always there. And to be supportive.
Some Days We was released in February on Amazon and in Barnes & Noble and Target. The COVID-19 pandemic put a lot of Julie's promotion of the book on hold. But Julie says the book's message is needed now more than ever.
Some days we have to, not go out because there's a global pandemic, and this is why we're staying in. And some days we have to wear a mask.
I can't read yet.
As Jack will shyly say, he can't read yet. But now, thanks to Julie, he understands. In Dumbo, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Finally tonight, a new song about family and how loved ones can help you weather any storm, even a hurricane. The Christian artist launching the music is a Grammy-nominated singer. Claudia Torres has the story.
Grammy-nominated musician Aisha Woods has launched the single Family, part of her new project Full Circle, to be released in September 2020.
Family, what is family about? Family it's a theme song, a global theme song of celebration, and celebration of one of humankind's greatest treasures, through it all, through the ups and downs, through the good times and the bad times alike.
Although the theme seems especially fitting during the coronavirus pandemic, as many families come out of an extended lockdown period, it was actually Hurricane Irma, which hit the southeast United States in 2017, that first inspired the song.
For that whole week almost, we were hunkered down and spending a whole lot of time together as a family, and that's actually when I wrote the song Family.
It wasn't a solo project, however. Woods co-wrote the song with her husband, a real testament to the ideals it embodies.
He's big on family. I'm big on family. We both come from very strong families. Thank God for that. Family is the absolute greatest representation of God's kingdom.
Woods says Full Circle is sure to challenge fans in their faith. She says they can expect to be inspired and encouraged. Most importantly, she says they can definitely expect to dance. The album, with its refreshing beats and message of unity, camaraderie, faith, and love, is what the artist calls an authentic, unapologetic Aisha Woods experience.
Claudia Torres filing that report. Aisha was born on Long Island. Her family says their motto is love God, love people, serve God, serve people. And that is Currents News. I'm Emily Drewby. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.